Namaste, मेरा नाम Ivana है or Hoi, my name is Ivana. Hi, my name is Ivana and I've been living in Bangalore now for 4 years. Ever since I came to live in India, I have always dreamed of going to a big, epic Indian wedding. And now actually I've had the privilege to experience a couple of different weddings in India because they actually vary a lot from state to state and also from certain types of castes and religions and those kind of things. And I've finally come to the point where I've experienced enough Indian weddings to feel that I can compare them with Western weddings. In case you don't know, I used to live in Amsterdam and I moved to India in 2018. I've linked all those playlists down in the description below, but in this video, however, the focus is completely on a general comparison between Indian weddings versus Western weddings, starting out with the amount of people who attend the weddings. Of course, we are getting into the wedding attire, then the different kinds of ceremonies for the nature of the parties, and finally, of course, we have to compare the food. So if you want to see it all, make sure to keep on watching until the end. Before we get into the video, make sure that you're subscribed to my newsletter because I share these comparisons first over there. The way to subscribe is to go to my website, ivanaperkovic.com. There will be a pop-up window and you just leave your email and then I can actually give you all of these previews and also share a lot of behind the scenes. So if you're not yet subscribed to my newsletter, you definitely should. Let's start off with comparison point number one, the amount of people to attend a wedding. In Western weddings, and most of my experiences are with Dutch weddings, the general amount of people will be about 50 people attending the wedding. If you have a wedding in the Netherlands of 50 up to 150 people, you're already having a massive wedding. In contrast to that, a small Indian wedding starts at about 200 up to 500 people. It only starts to get big from 1,000, 1,500 people. The largest wedding that I've ever heard of was attended by 5,000 people. Apparently, it was for the daughter of a real estate developer. However, what I think is important to take into account is that the general size of a regular Indian family is definitely 2 or 3 times bigger than a regular Dutch family. For instance, the family of the bride will already have 10 to 15 people. That's like close direct family. And then if the family of the groom also has 10 to 15 people, you easily get to 30 people, right? And then in India also there is a culture of inviting a much broader circle of people to the wedding. So for instance, neighbors, business associates, basically the whole village. Whereas in the Netherlands, you would keep it a lot more to direct family only. I have been invited to a couple of weddings of my co-workers, but that was only because we were very, very close friends. In general, you do not necessarily invite your co-workers to your wedding. But in India, that's way more common to just invite a way broader of circle to the wedding, and hence obviously the size of the wedding multiplies very fast. Moving into the next comparison point, which is such a massive difference, a very obvious difference. However, because it is so important, I definitely feel it's also important to include it, and it is the wedding attire. In Western weddings, basically the main basic choice for a bride is to wear a white wedding dress. Obviously, the cut of the dress will vary, the length of the dress will vary. There are different types of white. You can obviously go for snow white or ivory white, or maybe sometimes they will go for a little bit more cream. Sometimes there are a little bit of embellishments, but in general, it will be a white dress. For the groom, I feel the standards have gotten a lot more broad because colorful suits are actually making a huge entry into Western weddings. Where previously I feel it was only like black suits or dark blue suits, now it's also quite popular to have like a colorful suit, a pink suit for instance, or a light blue suit. I'm really happy to see that the men in Western weddings have gotten a lot more options. But for a bride, yeah, in general, it will just be a white wedding dress in different types of cuts or in different types of shades of white. In Indian weddings, however, most Indian brides will choose any type of hue of a red wedding dress, whether it's a maroon dark red type of color or a completely lighter hue of more pinkish red. The main choice of wedding dress color for Indian bride will usually be red, because red for a wedding dress in Indian culture is very auspicious. Now, what I find super interesting in wedding attire for Indian brides is that they can actually choose between a lehenga, which is a crop top and a long skirt, or a sari. They usually both will be red, but I love the fact that there are different types of cuts. What I've observed, however, and obviously feel free to correct me, is that usually in the south, Indian brides will choose a sari, and then in the north, they'll choose a lehenga more often. Then for the grooms, it is very interesting to see that they will usually somehow match the bride. So for instance, a light pink suit. Sometimes they will also go for like a gold hue or more of a cream type. It is a traditional suit with a high collar. Love those, they are so pretty. And then the Indian wedding shoes for grooms, I really like them as well. They're very, how do you say that? Oriental, for a lack of a better word. I just love the swirl at the top of the shoe. Something that is also a massive difference in Indian wedding attire versus Western wedding attire is the jewelry. In India, it's like the more jewelry, the better. Indian brides are completely decked out in gold everywhere. Gold in your hair, obviously golden earrings, multiple golden necklaces, golden belts, golden nose pins. Phenomenal. In Western weddings, that will usually be kept quite low-key, I have to say. Next, moving on to the wedding ceremonies. In Western weddings, there's usually one main moment where the bride and groom will say, I do. Sometimes in Western weddings, the bride and groom will choose to invite people for a rehearsal dinner the day before and maybe a party after the I do's. But in general, the I do moment will be the main moment of the wedding. In Indian weddings, there are always, at least from what I've observed, three main ceremonies. One is the haldi ceremony, which is kind of like a purifying ceremony for the bride and groom, where they are smeared with haldi, the turmeric paste. Then the second ceremony, which is super important, is the sangeet, which is kind of the engagement ceremony. And then the third super important ceremony are the feras, which is the circles around the fire. Now, you do have to take into account that that is only for Hindu weddings, but as 80% of India has mostly a Hindu religion, I've taken that as the main ceremony. But yeah, in Hindu weddings, you usually have the haldi, the sangeet, and the feras, which is, of course, again, 3 ceremonies compared to just 1 ceremony. And I found that very interesting. I do think it's important to note that depending again on the variety of Hinduism religion that the bride and groom have, they will take 4 versus 7 rounds around the fire. In contrast to the I do's in a Western ceremony, which usually lasts, let's say, an hour or something, the feras can last hours, where the Pandit or the priest does a lot of rituals, prayers. Yes, the circles around the fire are super important, but there are also different types of rituals that they do in between during the fera, so it lasts a lot longer than in a Western wedding. My absolute favorite moment of both wedding rituals, obviously in a Western wedding, when the bride and groom say I do. I really love that moment. But then in Indian weddings, I love the moment when the groom puts the sindoor on the bride, which is the red vermilion on the partition, and it signifies that she is married. And I love that moment. I just think it's very beautiful. The fourth comparison point that I'm going to talk about in Indian weddings versus Western weddings are the parties. Because honestly, I have never been to a Western wedding where there wasn't a huge party until quite late in the night. The most amazing party that I went to was from my best friends, and we just partied like until 1 to 3 a.m. in the morning. I will never ever forget those parties. Now, in contrast to the lies that Bollywood serves, I haven't really seen huge parties at Indian weddings. Usually there will be a stage during the reception, which is usually after the feras. Some people will be dancing there, but never in an Indian wedding have I seen a moment where everybody just jumps up and starts to dance. Bollywood. Are you telling me that you're telling me lies? I was very confused going to Indian weddings and just waiting and waiting and waiting until people were going to dance, and it just doesn't happen. There's just a stage, and sometimes also during other types of ceremonies. So for instance, with Simran's wedding, there was a stage also during the haldi ceremony, and we also did dances there. There was a lot of dancing during the Sangeet. So whenever you get an opportunity to dance at an Indian wedding, you should definitely jump in and join the party, because there's never going to be a moment where everybody goes and dances together. It just doesn't happen. Bollywood, the lies. The fifth comparison point is, let's be real, one of the most important comparison points, the food, man. The food. It's such an important component of any wedding, and in Western weddings, it is actually standard, I would even say, to have a sit-down dinner. Obviously, that's also easier to do if you have less people attending your wedding. So usually there will be a long table where the bride and groom are either sitting at the head of the table or in the middle of the table, and then the rest with a table seating is seated around the table. One of the largest weddings where I've been, there were multiple tables of 10, and then there's a table seating. Like, you have an assigned seat where you sit, so sometimes you're also stuck with people who you don't want to be stuck with. But yeah, that's the general arrangement in Western weddings. Buffets, to my very, very big sadness, are quite frowned upon in Western weddings. It's seen as like a little bit of a peasant thing to do, which I think is sad because I freaking love buffets. Hence why I'm so happy that in Indian weddings, buffets are pretty much the standard. It's one of the best things of Indian weddings. Obviously, a buffet is also a lot more manageable if you have 500 up to 5,000 people attending your wedding. And also, I feel a table seating chart would definitely not work in an Indian context. There's just no chance that you're gonna tell aunties and uncles that this is your seat and this is your designated seat. They'll just sit wherever they want to. Like, I don't see that working out in an Indian context. It would be funny to do an experiment, but yeah, I definitely don't see a set table seating chart working out. The big difference that you do see throughout Indian weddings and the types of buffets that are served, in North India, obviously you will have a lot of paneer dishes. Sometimes, as with my friend Simran's wedding, it will be a full vegetarian buffet, so you really won't be able to find any meat there. It really depends on the bride and groom and their families on what the diet and restrictions they have and what kind of type of religion they have. Obviously, I've also been to Punjabi weddings where there is plenty of meat and chicken served. But then in South Indian weddings, there's a different type of buffet where you actually get South Indian food served on a banana leaf, and the waiter does come to you and you can eat however much you want. Again, there is no set seating. That just makes me laugh so much. I just can't imagine a set table seating chart at an Indian wedding. Like, that would just be hilarious. Anyways, yeah, buffets are the ways to go in Indian weddings, and set seatings and sit-down dinners are more the way to go in Western weddings. What do you guys think of the comparisons? Is there a comparison that surprised you the most? Let me know down in the comments below. If you have been to a lot of Western and Indian weddings yourself, I want to hear what surprised you the most. Of course, if you enjoyed this video and you would like a lot more people to know how Western weddings differ from Indian weddings, make sure to share this video as well and put a thumbs up. You can also consider subscribing to my channel and joining 270,000 other subscribers. It's free and you'll get a notification whenever I upload a new video. For now, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!